There is a kind of pain that doesn't show up in X-rays, nor gets diagnosed in appointments. A pain with no name in medical dictionaries because it doesn't belong to the body, but to something far deeper. And if you're here, you've probably felt it already. That emptiness that appears just when you thought everything was going well, that loneliness in the middle of the crowd, that sense of being disconnected from a world that once felt familiar. You're not sick, you're not broken, you're awakening, and awakening hurts in ways no one warned you about. They told you that evolving was gratifying, that spiritual growth would fill you with peace and clarity. A lie. Growth first tears away everything you thought you were, leaves you naked before a truth you never asked to see. And while everyone else celebrates their unconsciousness, you carry 7 deadly pains understood only by those who have crossed the same threshold. These are not ordinary pains. They are fractures in the illusion, cracks in the collective lie that sustains the majority. And the worst part is that no one else sees them, no one else feels them, because they are too asleep to notice. The first pain is the most cruel, the impossibility of going back. Once you awaken, there is no return. You can pretend, you can try to fit again into empty conversations, automated routines, insignificant worries that once filled your days, but it no longer works. It's like trying to wear clothes from your childhood. They simply don't fit anymore. You look around and see people complaining about things that now seem ridiculous, worrying about invented problems, chasing dreams that aren't theirs. And you, trapped in this new awareness, can't return to the comfort of unconsciousness. Eckhart Tolle made it clear. When you identify with being instead of thought, the world as you knew it collapses. And that collapse hurts because even though it was a prison, at least it was familiar. You try to explain it, but the words fall flat. I've changed, you say, and they look at you as if you were a stranger, because you are. You're no longer who you used to be, and who you are now has no place in the world you once inhabited. That pain of no return is a permanent sentence. There is no anesthesia for it, no pill that brings back ignorance. The door closed behind you, and all that's left is to move forward, even if each step takes you farther from everything you once knew. Want to know the worst part? That part of you still longs for that unconsciousness, that deep sleep where questions didn't exist. But you can't sleep like that anymore, because now you know you were asleep. The second pain is conscious loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone. That one is easy. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people and feeling completely isolated. They talk, laugh, share, but you're not really there. You're observing from somewhere deeper, watching how everyone plays their roles without questioning the script. And the more you awaken, the wider the distance becomes. It's not that you think you're superior, it's simply that you no longer vibrate at the same frequency. They live identified with their minds, trapped in the past or projected into the future, while you begin to inhabit the now. And the now is a lonely territory when no one else lives in it with you. You try to connect, but conversations become superficial, forced. They talk about what they bought, what they're going to buy, what they said, what they should have said. They live in an endless cycle of automatic reactions, defending egos they don't even know they have. And you, who have begun to see the ego for what it is, a mental construct pretending to be real, can no longer participate in that theatre. Tolle put it clearly, the ego seeks conflict because in conflict it feels alive. But you no longer seek conflict, and that makes you invisible. People need drama to feel connected, and when you stop feeding it, you stop being interesting to them, and so you end up alone, not by choice, but as a natural consequence of awakening. The third pain is the weight of lucidity. Seeing what others don't see is a curse disguised as a gift. You observe how people destroy themselves, how they repeat self-destructive patterns, how they complain about the same things but never change anything. And you see it so clearly that it hurts. You want to help, you want to show them the exit, but you can't. Because awakening can't be taught, it must be experienced. You can point at the door, but if they're not ready, they'll keep walking in circles. And you carry that helplessness, watching unnecessary suffering all around you without being able to do anything but observe. The worst part is that the more you see, the more responsible you feel, as if your clarity obligated you to save everyone. But it doesn't work that way. Each person has their own path, their own timing, and although it hurts, you cannot live anyone else's life. Tolle warned, wanting to change others is another form of resistance, another way the ego tries to control what is. So you learn to let go, but that letting go also hurts. You watch those you love suffer from things that have solutions, but the solution requires awakening, and awakening cannot be forced. So you remain there, conscious yet powerless, watching the world consume itself in unconsciousness. The fourth pain is the loss of certainties. You once had answers, strong beliefs, a system that explained everything. But when you awaken, those structures crumble. You realize that most of what you believed was truth was simply conditioning, social programming, inherited ideas you never questioned. And suddenly, you find yourself in a void where nothing is certain, where every truth is provisional, where the only certainty is uncertainty. And that terrifies the mind, because the mind needs certainties to feel safe. But awakening throws you into the unknown, and there are no maps there. People cling to their beliefs because beliefs give them identity, something to hold on to. But you've seen that beliefs are just thoughts, repeated until they become apparent truths. And when that illusion breaks, you're left floating in a space where nothing is absolute. Tolle explained it ruthlessly. The mind wants to know, but being simply is. And being in being without the mind's certainties is one of the deepest pains of awakening, because the mind screams, demands answers, desperately seeks something solid to cling to. But you already know that solidity is fiction, and even though you know it, the fear remains, reminding you that you've lost the ground beneath your feet. The fifth pain is the ego's death in life. The ego doesn't surrender without a fight, and when you begin to awaken, the ego panics. It feels it's dying, because in a sense, it is. That identity built over years, that image you defended, that character you played, all of it starts to dissolve. And the ego resists with all its strength. It fills you with fear, doubt, self-sabotage. It makes you believe you're losing control, going crazy, making a mistake. But what's actually happening is that the ego is dying, and that death is necessary. The problem is that you've been so identified with the ego that its death feels like your own, and that is the most confusing pain of all, dying without dying. Feeling that everything you were is collapsing, yet you keep breathing, keep existing. Tolle said it plainly, the ego is a fiction, but it feels completely real. And when that fiction begins to dissolve, the terror is absolute. The mind convinces you that without the ego, you are nothing, that you'll lose everything that matters. But the truth is the opposite. Without the ego, you finally begin to be. But reaching that point requires going through a psychological death no one else understands, because most don't even know they're living under the ego's rule. The sixth pain is total responsibility. When you awaken, you can no longer blame anyone. No more excuses, no more victimhood. You realize that your suffering is your creation, that your reactions are your choice, that your life is the result of your consciousness. And that's liberating, but also terrifying, because it means there's no one left to point at, no external circumstances to justify your discomfort. Everything is within you, and that responsibility weighs like a mountain. People prefer to blame the world because it's easier. It's comforting to think your problems are caused by others, that you'd be happy if circumstances were different. But when you awaken, you see that's a lie. You see that suffering comes from inner resistance, from not accepting what is, and accepting that forces you to take responsibility for every emotion, every thought, every reaction. Tolle made it clear, what you resist persists, but letting go of resistance requires acknowledging that you are the creator of your experience, and even though that is empowering, it's also an immense burden because you can no longer hide behind comfortable excuses. The seventh pain is the most devastating, the loneliness of transcendence, because even though you awaken, even though you see the truth, you still live in a world that hasn't awakened, and that gap is unbridgeable. You walk among people, but you no longer fully belong to that world. You've seen something deeper, touched something beyond, and that separates you permanently. Not because you believe you're better, but because you simply no longer fit. And no one prepares you for that loneliness, for that silent exile, where you are completely alone in your consciousness. Most people seek community, tribe, belonging. But when you awaken, the tribe you had no longer recognizes you, and the tribe you seek doesn't exist. You're in an in-between place, too conscious for the asleep, too human for the enlightened. And that is the final pain, the loneliness of having no place. Tolle expressed it with devastating calm. Awakening is the end of the search, but also the end of the illusion of company. Because in truth, you've always been alone. The difference now is that you know it, and knowing it doesn't free you from the pain. It only teaches you to hold it with more grace. These 7 pains aren't punishments, they're signs that you're alive in a way most people will never experience. They hurt because you're growing, because you're breaking chains you didn't even know you carried. And although the path is lonely, although it hurts in ways without cure, it's the only path worth walking. Because in the end, what remains is not the pain, it's the truth. And the truth, though cruel, is the only thing that truly sets you free. If you've made it this far, it's because these pains aren't foreign to you, because something in you recognizes these words, because you're going through your own awakening. And even though the path is solitary, you're not entirely alone. This channel exists for those who dare to look at what others avoid, for those who choose uncomfortable truth over comforting lies. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring these truths that hurt but liberate, if you want content that doesn't lull you but wakes you even more. Here you won't find easy answers or cheap comforts, but you will find company in the exile of consciousness. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's keep walking together through this territory where few dare to enter.